भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। मुखं करोति वाचालं पुंगुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। Welcome to Nityam Bhagavad Sevaya daily Srimad Bhagavatam class. This is 10th chapter. Sorry, we read third chapter. Uh, third chapter 29. Third canto 29 chapter 29, 21. Slok 36. एताद्भगवतो एताद्भगवतो रूपं ब्रह्ममाना परमात्मा मना परं प्रधानं पुरुषं दैवं कर्म विचेष्टितम् एताद्भगवतो रूपं ब्रह्मणा परमात्मना परं प्रधानं पुरुषं दैवं कर्म विचेष्टितम्. Translation. This Purusha whom the individual soul must approach is the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Brahman and Paramatma. He is the transcendental chief personality and his activities are all spiritual. Purport. In order to distinguish the personality whom the individual soul must approach is described herein that this Purusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the chief amongst all living entities and is the ultimate form of the impersonal Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation. Since he is the origin of the Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation, he is described herewith as the chief personality. It is confirmed in the Katha Upanishad, Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetananam. There are many eternal living entities, but he is the chief maintainer. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita also, where Lord Krishna says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, I am the origin of everything, including the Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation. His activities are transcendental as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Janma Karma Chame Divyam. The activities and the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are transcendental. They are not to be considered material. Anyone who knows this fact, that the appearance, disappearance, and activities of the Lord are beyond material activities or material conception, is liberated. Joveti Tattvata Takta Deham Punarjanma Naiti Mameti Sa Arjuna. Such a person, after quitting his body, does not come back again to this material world, but goes to the Supreme Person. It is confirmed here with Purusha Purusham Brajet. The living entity goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by understanding his transcendental nature and activities. रूपाभेदस्पदं दिव्यं काल इति अविद्यते भूतानां महद् आदिनं यतो भिन्नादृशं भयम्. Translation: the timer factor, who causes the transformation of the various material manifestations, is another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who does not know that time is the same Supreme Personality is afraid of the time factor. Purport: everyone is afraid of the activities of time, but a devotee who knows that the time factor is another representation of or manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to fear from the influence of time. The phrase Rupa Veshadanam Vedas Padam is very significant. By the influence of time, so many forms are changing. For example, when a child is born, his form is small. But in the course of time, that form changes into a larger form, the body of a boy, and then the body of a young man. Similarly, everything is changed and transformed by the time factor or by the indirect control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Usually, we do not see any difference between the body of a child and the body of a boy or a young man because we know that these changes are due to the action of the time factor. There is cause for fear for a person who does not know how time acts. Slok 3.29.38. योनता प्रविश्य भूतानि भूतैरति अखिलश्रया स विष्णव अख्यो धियजनोऽसौ कालकल्यातं प्रभु. Translation: Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, is the time factor and the master of all masters. He enters everyone's heart. He is the support of everyone. And he causes every being to be annihilated by another. Purport: Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is clearly described in this passage. He is the supreme enjoyer, and all others are working as his servants. As stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila 5.14, Ekala Ishwar Krishna Arsabhritya, the only Supreme Lord is Vishnu. Arsabhritya, all others are his servants. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods are all servants. The same Vishnu enters everyone's heart as Paramatma, and he causes the annihilation of every living being through another being. Slok 3.29.39. न चस्य कश्चिद्दायितो न देवस्य न च बन्धवा अविस्- अविशति अप्रामत्तोऽसौ प्रमत्तं ज्ञानम् अंतक्रेत. Translation: no one is dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor is anyone his enemy or friend, but he gives inspiration to those who have not forgotten him and destroys those who have. Purport: forgetfulness of one's relationship with Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of one's repeated birth and death. The living entity is eternal as the Supreme Lord, but due to his forgetfulness, he is put into this material nature and transmigrates from one body to another. And when the body is destroyed, he thinks that he is also destroyed. Actually, this forgetfulness of his relationship with Lord Vishnu is the cause of his destruction. Anyone who revives his consciousness of the original relationship receives inspiration from the Lord. This does not mean that the Lord is someone's enemy and someone else's friend. He helps everyone. One who is not bewildered by the influence of material nature, material energy is saved, and one who is bewildered is destroyed. It is here therefore said, Harim binana mritim taranti. No one can be saved from the repetition of birth and death without the help of the Supreme Lord. It is therefore the duty of all living entities to take shelter of the lotus feet of Vishnu and thus save themselves from the cycle of birth and death. Yadvayadvati vatoyam surayas suryastapati yadvayad yadvayad varshate devo bhagano bhati yadvayad. Translation: out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the wind blows. Out of fear of Him, the sun shines. Out of fear of Him, the rain pours forth showers. And out of fear of Him, the host of heavenly bodies shed their luster. Purport: the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Maya dhakshena prakriti shrote characharam. Nature is working under my direction. The foolish person thinks that nature is working automatically, but such an atheistic theory is not supported in the Vedic literature. Nature is working under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, and we also find here that the sun shines under the direction of the Lord, and the cloud pours forth showers of rain under the direction of the Lord. All nature phenomena are under superintendence of the Supreme Personality of God Vishnu. Slok 41. Yadvana भीता यद यद्वनस्पतयो भीता लतश्चौषाधिभिश्वः स्वेषे काले विग्रहन् विगृह्णन्ति पुष्पनि च फलानि च. Translation: out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in its own season. Purport: as the sun rises and sets, and the seasonal changes ensue at their appointed times by the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so the seasonal plants, flowers, herbs, and trees all grow under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It is not that plants grow automatically without any cause, as the atheistic philosophers say. Rather, they grow in pursuance of the supreme order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is confirmed in the Vedic literature that the Lord's diverse energies are working so nicely that it appears that everything is being done automatically. Sravanti sarito bhita nat sarpati udadhir yata अग्निरिंधे गिरिभिर भूर्नामज्जति यद भयात. Translation: out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the rivers flow and the ocean never overflows. Out of fear of Him only does fire burn and does the earth with its mountains not sink in the water of the universe. Purport: we can understand from the Vedic literature that this universe is half filled with water, on which Garbhodakshay Vishnu is lying. From his abdomen, a lotus flower has grown, and within the steam of that lotus flower, all the different planets exist. The material scientist explains that all these different planets are floating because of the law of gravity or some other law. But the actual lawmaker is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we speak of law, we must understand that there must be a lawmaker. The material scientist can discover laws of nature, but they are unable to recognize the lawmaker. From Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, we can know who the lawmaker is. The lawmaker is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said here that the planets do not sink since they are floating under the order or energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They do not fall down into the water which covers half the universe. All the planets are heavy with their various mountains, seas, oceans, cities, palaces, and buildings, and yet they are floating. It is understood from this passage that all the other planets that are floating in the air have oceans and mountains similar to those on this planet. नाभो ददाति श्वसातं पदं नियमदद अदा लोकं स्वदेहं तनुते महान् सप्ताविरवृतम्. Translation: subject to the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sky allows outer space to accommodate all the various planets which hold innumerable living entities. The total universal body expands with its seven coverings under his supreme control. Purport: it is understood from this verse that all the planets in outer space are floating and they all hold living entities. The word Swaswata means those who breathe or the living entities. In order to accommodate them, there are innumerable planets. Every planet is a residence for innumerable living entities, and the necessary space is provided in the sky by the supreme order of the Lord. It is also stated here that the total universal body is increasing. It is covered by seven layers. And as there are five elements within the universe, so the total elements in layers cover the outside of the universal body. The first layer is of the earth and it is 10 times greater in size than the space within the universe. The second layer is water and that is 10 times greater than the earthly layer. The third covering is fire, which is 10 times greater than the water covering. In this way, each layer is 10 times greater than the previous one. गुणाभिमनिनो देवा सर्गदिस्व अस्य यद् भयात् वर्तन्ते नुनु नुयुगम् एषम् वसा एतच्चराचरम्. Translation: out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the directing demigods in charge of the modes of material nature carry out the functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction. Everything animate and inanimate within this material world is under their control. Purport: the three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, are under the control of the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Lord Shiva. Lord Vishnu is in charge of the mode of goodness. Lord Brahma is in charge of the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva is in charge of the mode of ignorance. Similarly, there are many other demigods in charge of the air department, the water department, the cloud department, etc. Just as the government has many different departments, so within this material world, the government of the Supreme Lord has many departments, and all these departments function in proper order out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Demigods are undoubtedly controlling all matter, animate and inanimate, within the universe, but above them, the Supreme Controller is the Personality of Godhead. Therefore, in the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Iswara Parama Krishna. Undoubtedly, there are many controllers in the departmental management of this universe, but the supreme controller is Krishna. There are two kinds of dissolutions. One kind of dissolution takes place when Brahma goes to sleep during his night, and the final dissolution takes place when Brahma dies. As long as Brahma does not die, creation, maintenance, and destruction are actuated by different demigods under the superintendence of the Lord, Supreme Lord. Shunanto nata kara kalo nadiradi kred abhayaya janam jane na janayan marayan mrityu nantakam. The eternal time factor has no beginning and no end. It is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maker of the criminal world. The maker of the criminal world. It brings about the end of the phenomenal world. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another. And likewise, it dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamraja. Purport. By the influence of eternal time, which is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Father begets a Son, and the Father dies by the influence of cruel death. But by time's influence, even the Lord of cruel death is killed. In other words, all the demigods within the material world are temporary, like ourselves. Our lives last for 100 years at the most, and similarly, although their lives may last for millions and billions of years, the demigods are not eternal. No one can live within this material world eternally. The phenomenal world is created, maintained, and destroyed by the finger single of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee does not desire anything in this material world. A devotee desires only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This servitude exists eternally. The Lord exists eternally, His servitor exists eternally, and the service exists eternally. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the third canto, 29th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila. Chapter 30, Description by Lord Kapila of Adverse Fruitive Activities. Text 1. Kapila Uvacha. Tasai tasai tatasai tasai tasya jano nunam nayam vedaru vikramam kalyamanopi balino vayor iva ghanavali. Tasai tasya jano nunam nayam vedaru vikramam kalyamanopi balino vayoriva ghanavali. Translation. The personality of Godhead said, as a mass as a mask of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind. A person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. Report. The great politician Pandita named Chanakya said that even one moment of time cannot be returned even if one is prepared to pay millions of dollars. One cannot calculate the amount of loss there is in wasting valuable time, either materially or spiritually. One should be very alert in utilizing the time which he has at his disposal. A conditioned soul lives in a particular body for a fixed measurement of time. And it is recommended in the scriptures that within that small measurement of time, one has to finish Krishna consciousness and thus gain release from the influence of the time factor. But unfortunately, those who are not in Krishna consciousness are carried away by the strong power of the time without their knowledge, as clouds are carried by the wind. श्लोक नंबर 2 श्लोक 2 यम यम अर्थम उपद्दत्ते दुखेन शोकहेतवे तम तम धुनोति भगवान उमंचुचाति यत्कृते. Translation: whatever is produced by the materialists materialist materialist with great pain and labor for so-called happiness, the supreme personality as a time factor destroys, and for this reason the conditioned soul laments. Whatever is produced by the materialist with a great pain and labor for so-called happiness, the supreme personality as a time factor destroys, and for this reason the conditioned soul laments. Purport: the main function of the time factor, which is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is to destroy everything. The materialists in material consciousness are engaged in producing so many things in the name of economic development. They think that by advancing in satisfying the material needs of man, they will be happy. But they forget that everything they have produced will be destroyed in due course of time. From history, we can see that there were many powerful empires on the surface of the globe that were constructed with great pain and great perseverance, but in due course of time they have all been destroyed. Still, the foolish materialists cannot understand that they are simply wasting time in producing material necessities, which are which are destined to be vanquished in due course of time. This waste of energy is due to the ignorance of the mass of people who do not know that they are eternal and that they have an eternal engagement also. They do not know that this span of life in a particular type of body is but a flash in the eternal journey. Not knowing this fact, they take the small flash of life to be everything, and they waste time in improving economic conditions. यद अधुवस्य देहस्य शानुबन्धस्य दुर्मति ध्रुवनी मन्यते मोहाद गृहक्षेत्रावशूनि च. Translation: the misguided materialistic does not know that his very body is impermanent and that the attractions of home, land, and wealth, which are in relationship to that body, are also temporary. Out of ignorance only, he thinks that everything is permanent. Purport: the materialist thinks that the persons engaged in Krishna consciousness are crazy fellows wasting time by chanting Hare Krishna, but actually he does not know that he himself is in the darkest region of craziness because of accepting his body as permanent. And in relation to his body, he accepts his home, his country, his society, and all other paraphernalia as permanent. This materialistic acceptance of the permanency of home, land, etc. is called the illusion of Maya. This is clearly mentioned here. Mohat Griha Kshetra Vasuni. Out of illusion, only does the materialist accept his home, his land, and his money as permanent. Out of this illusion, the family life. Out of this illusion, the family life, national life, and economic development, which are very important factors in modern civilization, has grown. A Krishna conscious person knows that this economic development of human society is but temporary illusion. In other part of Srimad Bhagavatam, the acceptance of the body as oneself, the acceptance of others as kinsmen in relationship to this body, and the acceptance of the land of one's birth as worshipable are declared to be the products of an animal civilization. When, however, one is enlightened in Krishna consciousness, he can use this for the service of the Lord. That is a very suitable proposition. Everything has a relationship with Krishna. When all economic development and material advancement are utilized to advance the cause of Krishna consciousness, if a new phase of progressive life arises. 3.30.4 Janturvaibhava etasmin yam yam yonim anubrajet tasyam salabhate nirvrityam na virajate. Translation: the living entity is whatever species of life he appears, finds a particular type of satisfaction in that species, and he is never averse to being situated in such a condition. Purport: the satisfaction of the living entity in a particular type of body, even it is no most abominable, is called illusion. A man in a higher position may feel dissatisfaction with the standard of life of a lower grade man. But the lower grade man is satisfied in that proposition because of the spell of Maya. The external energy Maya has two phases of activities. One is called Prakshatmika and the other is called Avarantmika. Avarantmika means covering and Prakshep, Prakshepatmika means pulling down. In any condition of life, the materialistic person or animal will be satisfied because his knowledge is covered by the influence of Maya. In the lower grade or lower species of life, the development of consciousness is so poor that one cannot understand whether he is happy or distressed. This is called avaratmika. Even a hog who lives by eating stool find himself happy. Although a person in a higher mode of life sees that the hog is eating stool, how abominable that life is. नारकास्थितोऽपि देहं भयि न पुमंस तक्तुम् इच्छति नारक्यं निर्वितौ सत्यं देवमाया विमोहिता. The conditional living entity is satisfied in his own particular species of life, while deluded by the covering influence of the illusory energy, he feels little inclined to cast off his body even when in hell, for he takes delight in hellish enjoyment. Purport: it is said that once Indra, the king of heaven, was cursed by his spiritual master Brihaspati on account of his misbehavior, and he became a hog on this planet. After many days, when Brahma wanted to recall him to his heavenly kingdom, Indra, in the form of a hog, forgot everything of his royal position in the heavenly kingdom and he refused to go back. This is the spell of Maya. Even Indra forgets his heavenly standard of life and is satisfied with the standard of a hog's life. But the influence of Maya, the conditioned soul, becomes so affectionate toward his particular type of body that if he is offered, give up this body, and immediately you will have a king's body. You will not agree. This attachment strongly affects all conditioned living entities. Lord Krishna is personally canvassing, give up everything in this material world. Come to me, and I shall give you all protection. But we are not agreeable. We think we are quite all right. Why should we surrender unto Krishna and go back to his kingdom? This is called illusion or Maya. Everyone is satisfied with his standard of living, however abominable it may be. आत्मा जया सुतागारा वसुद्रावी न बंधुषु निरुधा मूला हृदया आत्मनं बहुमन्यते. Translation: such satisfaction with one's standard of living is due to deep rooted attraction for body, wife, home, children, animals, wealth, and friends. In such association, the conditioned soul thinks himself quite perfect. Purport. This so-called perfection of human life is a concoction. Therefore, it is said that the materialist, however materially qualified he may be, is worthless because he is hovering on the mental plane, which will drag him again to the material existence of temporary life. One who acts on the mental plane cannot mm, get promotion to the spiritual. Such a person is always sure to guide down again to material life, glide down to again to material life. In the association of so-called society, friendship, and love, the conditioned soul appears completely satisfied. Sandhyayamana sarvanga tesham udvahana dhinana karoti aviratam mudha duritani durashaya sandhai amana sarvanga esam udvaha nandhina karoti abhiratam mudha duritani durashaya. Translation. Although he is always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activities with a hope, which is never to be fulfilled in order to maintain his so called family and society. Purport. It is said that it is easier to maintain a great empire than to maintain a small family, especially in these days when the influence of Kali Yuga is so strong that everyone is harassed and full of anxieties because of accepting the false presentation of Maya's family. The family we maintain is created by Maya. It is the perverted reflection of the family in Krishna Loka. In Krishna Loka, there are also family, friends, society, father and mother. Everything is there, but they are eternal. Here, as we change bodies, our family relationships also change. Sometimes we are in a family of human beings, sometimes in a family of demigods, sometimes a family of cats, or sometimes a family of dogs. Family, society, and friendship are flickering, and so they are called asat. It is said that as long as we are attached to this asat, temporary, non existing society and family, we are always full of anxieties. The materialists do not know that the family, society, and friendship here in this material world are only shadows, and thus they become attached. Naturally, their hearts are always burning, but in spite of all inconvenience, they still work to maintain such false families because they have no information of the real family association with Krishna. Akshiptat mindriyastrinam asatinam chamayaya रहोरचित्यालपि लपै शिशूनां कालभासिनम्. Translation. He gives heart and senses to a woman who falsely charms him with Maya. He enjoys solitary embraces and talking with her, and he is enchanted by the sweet words of the small children. But family life within the kingdom of illusory energy Maya is just like a prison for the eternal living entity. In prison, a prisoner is shackled by iron chains and iron bars. Similarly, a conditioned soul is shackled by the charming beauty of a woman, by her solitary embraces and talks of so called love, and by the sweet words of his small children. Thus he forgets his real identity. In this verse, the words Trinam, Asatinam indicate that womanly love is just to agitate the mind of man. Actually, in the material world, there is no love. Both the woman and the man are interested in their sense gratification. For sense gratification, a woman creates an illusory love, and the man becomes enchanted by such false love and forgets his real duty. When there are children as the result of such a combination, when there are children as the result of the such combination, the next attraction is to the sweet words of the children, the love of the woman at home, and the talk of the children make one a secure prisoner, and thus he cannot leave his home. Such a person is termed in Vedic language a Kriya Medhi, which means one whose center of attraction is home. Grihastha refers to one who lives with family, wife, and children, but whose real purpose of living is to develop Krishna consciousness. One is therefore advised to become a Grihastha and not a Griyamedi. The Grihastha's concern is to get out of the family life created by illusion and enter into real family life with Krishna. Whereas the Griyamedi's business is to repeatedly chain himself to so-called family life. in, in one life after another and perpetually remain in the darkness of Maya. 3.30.9 देहेषु कूतधर्मेषु दुःखतन्त्रेष्व अतन्द्रिता कुर्वन् दुःखा प्रतीकारम् सुखभन्मन्यते गृही. Translation: the attached householder remains in his family life, which is full of diplomacy and politics, always spreading miseries and controlled by acts of sense gratification. He acts just to counteract the reactions of all his miseries, and if he can successfully counteract such miseries, he thinks that he is happy. Purport: in Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead himself certifies the material world as an impermanent place that is full of miseries. There is no question of happiness in this material world, either individually or in terms of family, society, or country. If something is going on in the name of happiness, that is also illusion. Here in this material world, happiness means successful counteraction to the effects of distress. The material world is so made that unless one becomes a clever diplomat, his life will be a failure. Not to speak of human society, even the society of lower animal, the birds and bees cleverly manages its bodily demands of eating, sleeping, and mating. Human society competes nationally or individually, and in the attempt to be successful, the entire human society becomes full of diplomacy. We should always remember that, in spite of all diplomacy and all intelligence, in the struggle for our existence, everything will end in a second by the supreme will. Therefore, all our attempts to become happy in this material world are simply a delusion offered by Maya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. पतित पावन श्री गुरु महाराज की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव भक्त वृंद की जय. जय निताय गौर प्रेमा.